I'm Dr Melanie Windridge, a physicist and mountaineer. I'm climbing Everest and I want to highlight some of the science that gets us to the summit. Travellers in high mountain regions have been experiencing symptoms of altitude sickness for hundreds of years. By the end of the 1800s, scientists and mountaineers were investigating the physiological effects of high altitude. But why does the body react like this? This is Ferrochet. We're at 4,200 metres. Here, the Himalayan Research Association have a medical post, and I'm going to listen to a talk about altitude sickness.
The main stimulus for us to acclimatize at altitude is the lack of oxygen. So I'll draw your attention to this board over here. At sea level, it's 21% of the air is made up of oxygen. It's the same percentage here at altitude, except the particles are further apart. They're not so closely packed in together. Even though it's still the same percentage, you feel like there's less available oxygen to you because there's less of a drive for it to get into your blood. So in the bottom of the chart there, demonstrates at 5,800 meters, it feels like you have 50% of the available oxygen compared to sea level. And at the top of Everest, it feels like 28%. So it feels like there's 1/3 of the available oxygen, even though the same percentage of oxygen is available.
Improved medical facilities on the mountain can also save lives, and may be particularly useful for the Sherpas. I spoke to Suvash Dawadi, or Dawa, at Everest ER.
Our bodies are not meant to function at that altitude. So anything that you're doing above 7,000, 7,500 meters, you should not be doing in terms of physiology. But human beings, being human beings, like to push themselves and have done a really good job in getting there. Having an experience prepares you for so much in the mountain, not just in terms of mountaineering skills, but just seeing how your body reacts to hypoxic environments and lack of oxygen and all the hard work that you have to put to go up there, because each of us is different. Although there's a standard science, but everyone reacts differently to environment.
So what happens to our bodies when there's less oxygen around? We start breathing faster, we start breathing deeper. We try to get as much oxygen in as we can. So you'll notice that your respiratory rate is much higher than it would be at sea level. At sea level, we expect people to breathe 10 times a minute, 12 times a minute. Here, most people are breathing 16, 18 times a minute, easy. Our heart rates are much faster here. You're trying to circulate as much hemoglobin and oxygen as you can. So your heart rate, normally at sea level, it might be 60 or 50, and here it'll be 90 or 100. And that's pretty common for most people at altitude.
And so we're acclimatized now. We're here at base camp, 5,300 meters, but things are just much more of an effort. If you start scampering around base camp from your tent to the mess tent, then you suddenly have to stop and breathe more. You get out of breath. So I tend to walk around quite slowly. Obviously, if you need to do anything harder, like go up the mountain, you're walking really, really slowly. Just because you need to breathe, you need to get enough oxygen into your lungs. It hurts. It's a really weird feeling. And even sleeping at night can be harder. You don't sleep as well.
So talking about diseases at altitude, the main one is high altitude headache. If someone's going to get any kind of illness at altitude, the most likely thing is that they will get a high altitude headache. That's usually the first thing that happens. And these don't necessarily have to be dangerous. If it's just an uncomfortable headache, you can take Tylenol, paracetamol, ibuprofen for the headache. And for many people that'll go away. Once you start getting headache and either nausea or vomiting, or feeling extremely tired, or feeling dizzy, like you can't walk, then we start to consider this acute mountain sickness, or AMS. So headache plus these other 3 symptoms are considered acute mountain sickness. And acute mountain sickness is a spectrum of disease. It can be mild, it could be moderate, and it could be severe. Acute mountain sickness, it occurs because you're going too fast for your body to acclimatize. Everybody's different. At different altitudes, you will respond differently. So we say acute mountain sickness develops when you go faster than your body can acclimatize.
Everything is just a little bit harder. You're trying to do everything a little bit slower at altitude. On the mountain, I acclimatized well and only suffered mild symptoms of altitude sickness. Beyond Camp 2 though, like most climbers, I use supplementary oxygen to help me reach the summit and reduce the chance of complications.
So the treatment for severe AMS is always to descend if possible.
At high altitudes, the body degrades and infections or injuries take longer to heal. That's one thing I never considered when I was preparing for Everest, that I would be doing the biggest climb of my life in less than perfect health.
Although we're named Everest ER, it's mostly general practice issues. So your high altitude coughs or your upper respiratory tract infections, diarrhea, and then altitude illnesses. Not so much as other HRA clinics in terms of seeing a lot of trekkers with problems, but yeah, altitude illness as well. And mountaineering specific issues like musculoskeletal issues, just trauma and falling, and frostbite, cold injuries. That would be one of our fortes or things that we see quite a lot. The technology nowadays in terms of diagnostic is coming leaps and bounds. And this year we even had an ultrasound machine that has helped in diagnosis of a few cases and just helped us to make sure, we're accurate in our diagnosis.
It's tough up here. It's really tough up here. We're rewarded by moments of beauty. I'm sure it entirely makes up for the hardship. This is Camp 2. Lots of ice. I still have a cough. Right. Bye-bye.
Bronchitis or the Kumbu cough, well documented here, that will develop a chronic cough that doesn't go away despite antibiotics, despite cough syrup. It's not known exactly what causes the Kumbu cough. It may be the dry air, it may be the dust that's coming up. It may be a virus that's as yet unidentified, but people will often have Kumbu cough, and that can last weeks, even months.
Nutrition is also so important on the mountain, and staying hydrated aids acclimatization. Climbers on Everest can burn around 10,000 calories per day. That's about 3 to 5 times more than normal. So adequate nutrition is essential to keeping fueled and strong. If you get it wrong, it leads to dangerous exhaustion.
I guess we can't give up on this. We just have to do it. But I can't allow myself to get that weak again, because when I got into camp yesterday, I was just exhausted. We hadn't eaten enough, we hadn't drunk enough. We just flopped down into our tent and tried to, get some rest. But really we should have been doing this, boiling water, drinking. And that's really hard when you're that exhausted. So I can't let myself get that exhausted again.
For me, I'm really close to the mountains, and I get to treat a lot of people that work really hard or have put a lot of effort to get here and try and capture their dreams or just do their jobs. So if I can help make a little bit easier and not have them go down the valley each time there's an illness, that's what makes it great for me to work here.
See this inner boot? It's the same in my spandex, but it feels like just something's gripping me here.
You're gonna hurt every single day for nearly 2 months. Whether that's, your feet or your ribs or your breathing or your head or your shoulders because of your backpack. You're going to hurt every single day. You're going to suffer hardship. You're going to sit in tents. You're going to be too tired to do things. You're going to have to poo in the snow whilst trying not to fall down the mountain. It's horrific. It's horrific. But at the same time, it's truly mesmerizing. It's stunning. And you don't get to experience this kind of thing unless you put yourself through the hardship. Being amongst it, it's humbling and it's awesome, but it's really, really hard.
An improved understanding of physiology at high altitude, and even the nutrition required to support performance up high, played an important role in the successful first ascent of Everest in 1953. Climbers and others are still benefiting from that knowledge. As well as that, now we have better medical facilities at base camp and the possibility of helicopter rescue, which definitely keeps us safer.